For 3.6, we'll be going over solving quadratic inequalities. I'm going to do this a little bit differently than we did in class. So first, I'm going to solve for x. In this case, I'm looking for when x is equal to 0. That would mean x equals -4 and x equals 1. From there, I'm going to place them on a number line. I have a -4 and a +1. 0 would be in the center. I am going to test I'm going to test 0. So what happens when I plug a 0 in to my inequality? When I plug 0 in, I get a 4 times -1. 4 times -1 is -4. Is -4 less than 0? True. That means it's true within the center, and they are open dots from the inequality. That means my interval would be between -4 and 1. So I have my equals and my interval. These are the two solutions that it's looking for. Question 2. First step, I solve for x. So I'm thinking, when is it equal to 0? When x is equal to 2 and when x is equal to -3. I place those on my number line. And they are open dots because it is not equal to them. 0 is centered. I'm going to test 0. I'm just going to plug it in. Negative parentheses 0 minus 2, 0 plus 3. Is 6 less than 0? False. 0 does not work, so because this was false, I'm going to shade the outside sections. That would be from -infinity to -3, gap, to infinity for the interval. Question 3, it's not factored. I'm going to try and factor it. This would be an x. 8 would be 8 times 1, +8 minus 1. 8 minus 1 is 7. 8 times -1 is -8. I'm going to find the solution. X should be a -8, or x should be a +1. I place them on my number line. They are open dots, and I'm going to look for 0. I'm going to test 0. When I plug 0 in, 0 squared plus 7 times 0 minus 8 is greater than 0. Zeros are going to cancel those out. Is -8 greater than 0? False. I shade not the inside, but the outside. This was false. So that means the outside would be true. There's our interval. Question 4. I'm going to attempt to factor it. X, 12 would be 4 and 3, or 2 and 6, negative, positive. Negative 6 plus 2 is 4, but when I multiply them, they make a negative 12. Doesn't work. I can't factor it, so I'm going to use the quadratic formula or perfect square. I'm going to do perfect square. This would become a minus 12, x minus 2 squared. That would become a plus 4. 2 squared is plus 4. Plus 4. Negative 12 plus 4 is negative 12, 10, negative 8. I then square root it. Negative 8 is imaginary. So that means x minus 2 is equal to I root 8, negative I root 8. If you reduce this, 8 is 4 times 2, but 2 would leave, and then I would add. These are imaginary solutions. That means when I test my number line, I'm going to just test 0. It will shade the entire line or it will not shade at all. So I'm going to plug a 0 in. 0 squared minus 4 times 0 plus 12 is less than or equal to 0. Those will cancel. Is 12 less than or equal to 0? False. Because this is false, I don't shade any of the line. Does not exist. Question 5. I'm going to factor. I'm going to take an x out, which would leave a negative x plus 3. This x would equal 0. This x would equal a 3. Negative 3 plus 3 would make a 0. That's why I'm plugging in a positive 3 with the sign. I then place those values on my number line. They are closed dots. And then I need to test. So because 0 is already given, I'm going to plug a 1 in. And see if it's true or false. So I'd have a negative 1 squared plus 3 times 1 is greater or equal to 0. I'm going to calculate. Negative 1 squared plus 3 times 1 is 2 greater or equal than 0. True. 2 is bigger. This is true. I'd shade center, which would mean it's between 0 and 3. Question 6. There's a minus 20 over here. I'm going to fix it by saying x squared minus 9x plus 20. And now I'm going to try and factor it. 20 would be 4 and 5. Negative, negative. They add up to negative 9. They multiply to positive 20. That means x equals 4 and x equals 5. On the number line, I have 4 with an open dot and 5 with an open dot. If I wanted to test 0, 0 would be over here on the left side of the 4. I can test the outside. It's completely fine. So I'm going to test 0. 0 squared minus 9 times 0 plus 20, those would cancel. Is 20 less than 0? False. Now because the exterior is false, that means this exterior is also false. That means I shade center only. 4 to 5. X squared minus 9. I would have x plus 3, x minus 3. When I add them, they make 0. When I multiply them, they make negative 9. That means x equals negative 3, x equals positive 3. I place it on my number line with open dots. And now I'm going to test 0. 0's in the center. 0 squared minus 9 is negative 9 greater than 0. False. Negative 9 is not bigger than 0. So because this is false, I shade outside. Parentheses because of the open dots. Interval. When I try and factor 8, these add up to 0, but when I multiply them, they make a negative 4. Factoring won't work. I'm going to try the square root method. Square root of negative 4 is a 2i. These are imaginary values. So on my number line, I will only have a 0, and I'm going to test it. 0 squared plus 4 is less than or equal to 0. Is 4 less or equal to 0? False. Does not exist. Just in case, what if it had been x squared plus 4 is greater or equal to 0? And you had plugged a 0 in. And it had been true. Then you would have shaded the entire number line, which would be negative infinity to infinity, if you ever shade the entire line for the imaginary.